Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ram Hare Ram Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ram Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Ram 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 Hare Krishna Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Ram, Krishna Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Om Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Ram. Ram, 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 Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, 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 Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, 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 Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, 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 Hare Ram, 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 Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, 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 Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, 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 Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, 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 Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, 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 Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, 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 Hare Krishna, Ram, 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 Hare Krishna, Ram, 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, 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 Hare Krishna, Ram, 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 Hare Krishna, Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, 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 Hare Krishna, Ram, 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 Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, 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 Hare Krishna, Ram, 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 Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, 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 Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, 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 Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Ram, 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 Krishna Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, 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 Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, 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 Hare Hare, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, 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 Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Oh, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna. Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram. Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Sit properly. Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna. Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna. Ram Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Ram Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Ram Hare Krishna Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare 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 Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Ram, Ram, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Oh, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, 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 Krishna Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna. Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Krishna. Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram. Sit properly. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Krishna Krishna Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Krishna Krishna. Ram. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Ram Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna. Ram Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Krishna. Ram Ram Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram. Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna. Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Ram Ram. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna. Ram Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jai Prabhupada. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Jai Krishna Balaram. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Premanandi. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Gaura, Premananda. Jaya Sachinandana, Jaya Sachinandana, Jaya Sachinandana, Jaya Sachinandana, Jaya Sachinandana, Gaura Hare, Gaura Hare, Jaya Gaura Hare. Nitai Gaurang, Nitai Gaurang, Nitai Gaurang, Nitai Gaurang, Nitai Gaurang, Nitai Gaurang, Hare, Nitai Gaurang, Nitai Gaurang, Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jai Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jai Prabhupada. Oh, glorious to the glorious to
Thou who was the great orders, by his grace on the cross of the suffering, and examines us in vision, having wished thy conscience purified, the words and names of us now. Attachment with those things, affection to the Lord's eyes. Be opened by thy guides to my heart transcendent knowledge. It is my Lord, birth after birth, from making sacred elements, by him weakness destroyed, the pervading scriptures sing his character. Our spiritual master of virtue and mercy, and the born Lord master of the rivers. O master, you must hold us. Give us the shade of your Lord's feet. Your fame is spread all over the free world, so we take shelter of the Lord's feet.
Jaya Gopidana Vallabha Giridhari Asodanandana Badadanaranjana Asodanandana Badadanaranjana Jamuna Theda Vanachari Yamuna Theda Vanachari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki jai, ISKCON Govinda ki jai, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Guru Pamanandi. All glories to the devotees, all glories to the Sama devotees, all glories to Shigu and Shiguranga. So, reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 23, Text 54. Is that right? Hope so. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Indriyateshu sajant sajancha prasangastvai me kritaha ajanancha parambhavam tapas tatapashtva baya me indriyateshu sajancha prasangastvai me kritaha ajanancha parambhavam tatapashtva baya me indriyateshu sajancha prasangastvai me kritaha ajanancha parambhavam tatapashtva baya me indriyateshu sajancha prasangastvai me kritaha ajanancha parambhavam tatapashtva baya me indriyateshu sajancha prasangastvai me kritaha ajanancha parambhavam tatapashtva baya me idanteshu sajancha ajanancha parambhavam tatapashtva baya me. You ladies. Indriyateshu sajancha prasangastvai me kritaha ajanancha parambhavam tatapashtva me. Word for word, indriyateshu, to sense gratification. Sajancha, being attached. Prasangaha, affinity. Twayi, for you. Me, by me. Kritaha, was done. Ajanancha, not knowing. Parambhavam, your transcendental situation. Tata api, nonetheless. Astu, let it be. Abhayaya, for fearlessness. Me, my. Translation purpose. Only says he Bhagavatam Swami not knowing your transcendental situation, I have loved you while remaining attached to the objects of the senses. Nonetheless, let the affinity I have developed for you rid me of all fear. So this is Devahuti speaking to her husband Kadama Muni. Please repeat. Not knowing your transcendental situation, I have loved you while remaining attached to the objects of the senses. Nonetheless, let the infinity I have developed for you rid me of all fear. Purport. Devahuti is lamenting her position. As a woman, she had to love someone. Somehow or other, she came to love Kadama Muni. But without knowing of his spiritual advancement, Kadama Muni could understand Devahuti's heart. Generally, all women desire material enjoyment. They are called less intelligent because they are most prone to material enjoyment. Devahuti laments because her husband had given her the best kind of material enjoyment, but she did not know that he was so advanced in spiritual realization. Her plea was that even though she did not know the glories of her great husband, because she had taken shelter of him, she must be delivered from material entanglement. Association with a great personality is most important. Chaitanya Charitamrita. Lord Chaitanya says that sadhu sangha, the association of great saintly persons, is very important, because even if one is not advanced in knowledge, simply by association with a great saintly person, one can immediately make considerable advancement in spiritual life. As a woman, as an ordinary wife, Devahuti became attached to Gautama Muni in order to satisfy her sense enjoyment and other material necessities, but actually she associated with a great personality. Now she understands this, and she wanted to utilize the advantage of the association of a great husband. Well, I have to be honest to say I cringe when I hear these statements that women are less intelligent. And I offer my humble obeisance to the ladies here that despite such statements, you still have enough faith and conviction to come to Krishna consciousness and continue your practice. So the basis of this class is more or less to unpack that statement, to try to understand what Prabhupada says, not to find fault in Prabhupada, but because it's interesting to see that in the word for word, less intelligent isn't mentioned at all. So this is Prabhupada's inclusion in his purport. So, and we understand who Prabhupada was. He's accepted as a pure devotee, eternal associate of Krishna, empowered with certain vibhutis or opulences, particularly one, the outstanding one. He was able to translate the Vedic literature from Sanskrit into contemporary English understanding for, common understanding for, modern times. So when we talk about intelligence, are we talking about IQ? Do men have more IQ than women? Well, that doesn't stand, research shows that both are more or less the same. And we all know super intelligent women and men who are, quite dull-headed. So, we can't really use, is that what Prabhupada's talking about? And we see so many ladies that have achieved great achievements during their life, like, for instance, professors, PhDs, CEOs, lawyers, Supreme Court judges, jet pilots. There's even currently one of the ladies is a commanding officer of the US nuclear aircraft carrier. So they don't achieve these positions by being less intelligent. So we're not talking about IQ, and I don't think we can even say intellectual prowess also. So I was thinking, well, Srila Prabhupada, it is some of our senior devotees have presented that to some degree Srila Prabhupada is a man of his times. So what does that mean? That where he was born, what was the influence on the society at the time of his birth? So, the Indian Vedic culture at the time of his birth, 1896, it's always been quite a patriarchal culture, like male-dominated, where the women had limited facilities to be in any sort of civic society positions. Generally, the role was, at home with the children, etc. There are some exceptions, but we know later on, in the 19th century, Indira Gandhi, she became the Prime Minister of India. So there are exceptions, but generally it is a patriarchal culture. And on top of that, at the time of Prabhupada's birth, it was more or less a British occupational government. At that time, it was under the rule of Queen Victoria up until about 1901, and then King Edward took over. But the Victorian British era was also very, very conservative. And, women were more or less the same. They had limited ability to get into, civic society positions. And, they weren't allowed to vote. And so there was a lot of suppression there in different ways. There was, if a lady became quite outspoken or passionate about something, she was immediately diagnosed with hysteria. And a doctor would give her some, laudanum or some sort of suppressive medication. So this is the social system when Prabhupada was born. So, it's male-dominated. But still, can we say that doesn't make women less intelligent because they've been suppressed by, male society? And then we can see, we could question some people. Actually, Prabhupada himself said, I like to read my books because I didn't write them, Krishna wrote them. So can we take that literally? That actually it wasn't Prabhupada's fault. It was Krishna who was writing this. So different arguments like that. But, Prabhupada wasn't on autopilot. If it was simply Krishna dictated, he wouldn't have any need to... Before he wrote his purports, he had the teachers, had a big compilation of volumes from all the previous acharyas, and he would read all those commentaries before he wrote his purports. So, his own intelligence and free will was obviously in there. He wasn't simply an instrument being dictated by Krishna. From an academic point of view, there was one psychologist, Gardner, his name was. He analysed 9 different types of intelligence, and according to, you can go online to Gardner's 9 different types of intelligence and do a survey, and you work out where you fit in. So like visual, spatial intelligence, musical intelligence, existential intelligence, etc., etc. But still, even if you identified that doesn't make a person more or less intelligent. It's just measuring who you are at that time. And we do see that, we were watching the pastimes of Srila Prabhupada yesterday on the video, and there were so many of his female disciples were glorifying Prabhupada in so many ways. They just, how he was so compassionate and caring about them. So a person who thinks that women are less intelligent, they wouldn't be saying that as not simply a, cult-induced, shallow glorification of the cult leader. They were genuinely giving their emotional, experience of how Prabhupada was so caring for them. And if you've read Jamuna's biography, it was that Life of Devotion, I think it was called, it was 2 volumes. And Jamuna, she was so attached to Srila Prabhupada, particularly listening in class. She would always sit right in front of Prabhupada and take copious notes. And she just loved that, be able to do that. So in Vrindavan, she was doing that regularly. And then, after some time, Western sannyasis were starting to turn up. And I can only say perhaps due to over-enthusiasm, or perhaps they didn't have that spiritual maturity. They were thinking that the men are in charge and the women are subordinate. So at one point, one of the Western sannyasis told Jamuna that you have to sit at the back with the other women. And Jamuna was heartbroken. So anyway, she did that for a couple of days, and after a while, Prabhupada said, you don't want to listen to me anymore? And Jamuna said, well, I was told to sit at the back. And almost reluctantly, Prabhupada says, well, yes, that is the custom. So it's not that he was telling anybody to do that. I mean, he loved Jamuna in so many ways, just her loyalty in his service, etc. So we get down to when we talk about the word intelligence, different definitions. Cambridge Dictionary defines the ability to learn, understand, and make judgments or have opinions that are based on reason. So that's gender neutral. It doesn't say the men's ability, that's very gender neutral. So anybody could fit into that. There was a research done by 12 sort of psychologists, scientific theorists, on what does intelligence mean, because there's always been a debate, what does it mean and how to quantify it. So 24 of these scientific theorists, they wrote what is their definition, and they got 12 completely different definitions. So, to try to quantify it or understand it, it's very difficult. One of the ladies, Linda Gottfredson, she wrote the ability to deal with cognitive complexity. So that's men or women either. So perhaps you can raise the question, is the intelligence that Prabhupada's talking about more related to emotional qualities? So one senior devotee I came across, his writing, he said, research shows that women retain stronger, more vivid memories of emotional events than men do. They recall emotional memories more quickly, and the ones they recall are richer and more intense. So that sounds like a positive thing in one way, that, they're more in touch with their emotions. And is Prabhupada talking about a different type of intelligence than the norm? Whether it's emotional intelligence or IQ, etc. Is there something else he was referring to? So this same devotee, he wrote, Srila Prabhupada speaks of a particular type of intelligence, one not necessarily covered by the usual definitions, but a form of cognitive disposition that favours and facilitates philosophical and spiritual analysis. A brain that assists in discriminating spirit from matter and in developing knowledge-based detachment. In other words, an intelligence less enmeshed with material feelings and emotions, less influenced by material attachments and relationships. So, so we're getting to perhaps because women sometimes are presented as more soft-hearted, nurturing qualities, that they're more in touch with their emotions, and perhaps what Prabhupada's referring to here, that is men have the capacity to understand higher spiritual topics. But so that's generally quite often how devotees present this understanding. But we also know that we have some very scholarly ladies in the movement and in general that, have a far better understanding than a lot of men. So this comes to the controversy of editing Prabhupada's books. Because Srila Prabhupada, he wanted everyone to come to Krishna consciousness. And if you understand what the general role of sannyasis and spiritual culture in India, what Prabhupada did when he came to the West was nothing less than revolutionary, nothing less. He saw that the men and women, mingled freely. He encouraged, the establishment of brahmacharya ashrams in the West. You don't get brahmacharya ashrams in India. It's only in the West. And ladies on the altar, even now in India, you just don't see that. So he was, and even the sannyasis were forbidden to cross over the ocean, So, as I said, in so many ways, he was completely revolutionary for his time. So the point I was saying that Prabhupada, he wanted everyone to come to Krishna consciousness. So would he be putting in his book something that would check, half the population, half the feminine population from discouraging them by his purports? Well, we can't really accept that just from the experiences a lot of the ladies had during Prabhupada's time. So, because there is the argument that a lot of these books his books have been edited, and there is a group of, subgroup within ISKCON. They only read pre-1972 books because they say after that they were being edited and changed, and they weren't happy about that. And one of the verses they used to establish their argument, Bhagavatam 1.5.11, on the other hand, that literature which is full of description of the transcendental glories of the name, fame, pastimes, etc., the unlimited Supreme Lord, is a different creation full of transcendental words directed toward bringing about a revolution in impious lives of the world's misdirected civilization. Such transcendental literature, and this is the point that they play on, even though imperfectly composed, that's the point that they focus on. Even though imperfectly composed, are heard, sung, and accepted by purified men who are thoroughly honest. So their argument is, well, English wasn't his first language, and maybe he got some things wrong, but according to the Bhagavatam, even if it's apparently imperfectly composed, we should accept that is, and you don't change one word. So that's the argument of some devotees. So one of our senior devotees, Kuntaya Prabhu, he's put out a book called Tough Questions, Difficult Answers, which focuses on some of these points. So he writes, Srila Jiva Goswami continued editing Srila Rupa Goswami's books even after Rupa's departure, as evidence in a letter from Jiva to Srinivasacharya and Narottam Das Thakur, referenced in the Bhakti Ratnakar. In fact, the only versions of Rupa Goswami's books we now possess are the ones edited in his lifetime and posthumously by Jiva Goswami. So I've tried to do a bit of a balanced approach, how to understand this. I spoke to one of our senior ladies here, and she responded that Prabhupada is talking about the emotional aspect when he says intelligence. Ladies do have a capacity to become more emotional. And she did mention that because of the perhaps immaturity of some of the men in the early days, she said in Melbourne, the ladies weren't allowed to drive because they were less intelligent. So, so this is a complete misunderstanding based on, what Prabhupada is presenting to us. And even in the purport, Prabhupada says that Devahudi was an ordinary woman. I mean, even that, Devahudi, earlier than that, Prabhupada mentions that Devahudi, she was married to Kadama Muni, a Mahayogi, great mystic, and his wife Devahudi was a Yoga Lakshana. So that doesn't sound like an ordinary person, I guess, but Prabhupada's using these words, but we try to understand what, the overall general understanding. So Yoga Lakshana mean ones who was very advanced in yoga. And, Devahudi, she was the wife of, the daughter of Swayambhuva Manu. And she had two illustrious brothers, Priyavrata and Uttanapad. Uttanapad was the father of Dhruva Maharaj. And two sisters, Akuti and Prasuti, and they were both married to Prajapatis. So we can't really say that she was ordinary, but you try to get the gist of what Prabhupada is saying. You're trying to present, making a presentation perhaps that despite all these apparent negatives, she was married to a very illustrious saint, and perhaps not fully knowing until he manifested the aerial mansion just by mystic yoga, etc. Not fully understanding his his greatness in that sense. And because she's thinking perhaps, well, I'm an ordinary woman, but I've been married to a great yogi, great devotee, that I'll take full advantage of that through that association, sadhu sangha. So, and really, today, Kalur, Sudra, Sambhrava, we're all born Sudras in that sense, that we're all unqualified. And there was one time Prabhupada, he would tease Jamuna sometimes, says, yes, Jamuna, you know that all women are less intelligent. And he would just see what her reaction was, just joking. And Prabhupada said, yeah, of course they are. And he would say that, yes, only if you think you're a woman. If you know that you're a spirit soul devotee, then these things don't apply. So he would tease her in that way, but he never in a way of putting down. But yeah. So, that was just some of the points. I don't know if I've covered it in a proper balanced way, but as I said, I actually, Krishna Rupa Mataji did tell me that, because she's involved with the BBT editing and different things, that there is a new edition of Bhagavatam coming out, and a lot of these statements have been taken out. So that's very controversial in itself. But the idea, particularly, we have to be with the times, not watering down the philosophy, but make it as open as possible and as attractive as possible for both genders to be attracted to, take up spiritual life. So perhaps I'll end there. Please accept my obeisance if I've said anything upsetting or offensive, but is there any questions or comments at all? Just behind you then.
Hare Krishna,
Yes,
Prabhu. Yeah, I just went and got my computer because on here I have a file where I've collected some really nice Srila Prabhupada quotes about the intelligence of women.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If somebody else has another question, I can get my computer up and running in the meantime.
Okay. What happened to the Gurukul students?
They went for a little rest.
I had some questions lined up for them, but they didn't turn up. So, anyway, yes, your question.
I just wanted to point out, I don't know if I understood correctly about the either purport or that, to my understanding, so the point was that people are less intelligent because of their propensity to want to enjoy. And so in this case, it was explaining that women have more propensity to enjoy. And so
that seems to be what Prabhupada's saying, just in general, that, but, in Kali Yuga...
we all have different propensities.
In Kali Yuga, everybody has that propensity. Somehow or other, Prabhupada is just using the position of women in that sense. But, yeah. But that's more or less, see, just in general, the nature seems to be like that. That's what he's presenting here. Yeah. Yes, Rupa.
Hare Krishna, thank you very much for your class. Yep.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. Good point. Yeah, just you're next.
So, just regarding women driving, that didn't last very long in Melbourne because there are many men who have never gotten a driver's license.
Yeah, right.
But and there was a pastime where Srila Prabhupada was being driven on more than one occasion by his spiritual daughters. And on this particular occasion we heard about, Prabhupada was in the front seat and one of his spiritual daughters was
Yeah. Yeah.
commentary. You probably can't do that. But in this way, we're cooperating with one another to spread Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement. So,
Yeah, I have read that pastime.
you've heard that
yeah.
too, Mani Bandha Gopal? Yeah.
Yeah, so he was always appreciative what anybody could offer. Yeah. Yes, Patna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Okay, so I've got three here that I'll read out.
Okay.
All right. So the first one is from Teachings of Queen Kunti number 3. So Srila Prabhupada says, although women, Sudras, and Vaishyas are ordinarily considered to belong to a lower class, when one becomes a devotee, he or she goes beyond such designations. Women, Sudras, and Vaishyas are ordinarily regarded as less intelligent. But if one takes to Krishna consciousness, one is the most intelligent, as stated in the Chaitanya Charitamrita.
Yep.
Okay, so that's the first one. The next one is also from Teachings of Queen Kunti number 3. Prabhupada says, although Kunti had the body of a woman, she was a devotee. Therefore, she was not like an ordinary, unintelligent woman. Rather, she was the most intelligent, for she recognized Krishna to be the Supreme Godhead. And then in quotation marks, he has come to me to offer me respect, materially appearing to be my nephew, but he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. End of quote. Okay, and the last one, so this is from one of Srila Prabhupada's letters to Himavati in 1969. And he writes, so I am especially proud how my householder disciples are preaching Lord Chaitanya's mission. This is a new thing in the history of the Sankirtan movement. In India, all the acharyas and their descendants later on acted only from the man's side. Their wives were at home because that is the system from old times, that women are not required to go out. But in the Bhagavad Gita, we find that women are also equally competent, like the men, in the matter of Krishna consciousness movement.
Yeah, so they're all very good quotes. Of course, in that sense, even if the ladies are at home and the men are at, spiritual activities, that the wife gets half of the benefit as well. So it is cooperation in that sense. But thank you for that input. One last question. I have to get to work. One last question. Oh, did you? Okay.
Prabhupada was saying that Devahuti didn't understand the transcendental position of Kadama Muni.
Yeah.
One may think that, well, if she is a Nityasiddha, pure devotee of Krishna, wouldn't she have understood his transcendental position and probably already heard about his, glories before?
Yeah, we'd assume so, but I guess Prabhupada's just presenting her as, a generalised idea of a woman and, being less intelligent in the sense that desiring, material enjoyment, etc. But like I said, previous verse said she's a yoga lakshana, she's very advanced in yoga. So I would say she definitely knew, but somehow or other Prabhupada's just setting the scene to some degree like that.
Just on that, I think it was Narada Muni who actually did tell her about Kadamba Muni.
Yeah.
So like she definitely knew his qualities.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I think this is an actually really nice example of an explanation for this because it can be very bewildering,
Yeah,
and it can even be taken and be used offensively.
sure, yeah.
So I think Prabhupada's explanation here is very apt for it. Because, we understand that most women desire marriage to have children and all of that. That doesn't mean that the men are less inclined to go that way because they want sense gratification, so they're into that. But that, as Prabhupada sort of says here, it's that the desire for material enjoyment to have all of that is less intelligent. But that doesn't cut out the individual basis that a woman can be more intelligent.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's using that word, but like I said in the verse, less intelligent isn't used. But Prabhupada is bringing that up in the purport. I just wanted to focus on that because it's a little bit like, the elephant in the room. Yeah, we know it's there, but we don't want to talk about it. So I just wanted to bring it out.
All glories to you for doing that. That's, yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. Prabhupada ki jai.